For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
This is StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh, Revi, and you're watching our flagship show from Tuesday to Thursday, The Gist. A warm welcome again to StratNews, to Australian High Commissioner Barry O'Farrell. High Commissioner, thank you so much for your time. This is, I think, our second interview. Of course, we can't do it in person this time, but appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Amitabh.
High Commissioner, of late, unfortunately, because of the second wave in India, we've seen a lot of assistance that has been coming in from around the world, and Australia has been also helping us a lot. What's interesting to see is that it's not just the Australian government or a government initial assistance that is coming through. It's organizations, associations. I think I saw a Haryana association from Australia, as well as even the Australian Cricket Board or cricketers who are helping. So it's across the board that Australia's helping us when we need it, like we have in the past helped the world.
Well, I think, Amitabh, the fact is that people understand that this is a terrible episode. This is what we all thought was going to happen last year and thankfully didn't, but regrettably it's attacked with great virulence this year. And I think it's a reflection of two things: India's status in the world, but in terms of Australia also, the fact that as we sit here, 1 in 30 Australians are of Indian origin. In other words, either born in India or who have one or other parent born in India. So I think both those things have led to this. And we have seen, in addition to the 30 tonnes of medical supplies provided by the Australian government, business has been making a big contribution. Our oldest, one of our oldest companies and one of the world's largest miners, BHP, through its foundation, has donated $2 million to Indian Red Cross. But across the board, whether it was Pat Cummins who set the ball rolling with a $50,000 donation to PM Cares Fund, it was followed by the Australian Cricket Board and cricket community in Australia, which one of those great things we share with India, even when we lose, is supporting efforts to try and assist India at this time. So I think you shouldn't be surprised at what countries around the world are doing, because it does reflect the influence and the status and the friendship of a great country like India.
I've seen some of your tweets where you're talking about Australian research and how that could impact, all countries around the world, people around the world, in terms of research or to fasten the process of getting vaccines. But in terms of assistance to India or the cooperation on that front, is there anything still ongoing?
Well, a plane came in again last night, which was delivering ventilators and oxygen concentrators. Happily, we're working with Tata, one of India's best-known businesses around the world. They returned a number of very large oxygen tanks, courtesy of the Indian Air Force, a few weeks ago. And on Sunday, one of our Australian Defence Force aircraft will be landing here in Delhi with the delivery of another of the oxygen tanks that Tata Steel is donating to the cause here in India. So it is fantastic. And what I'm delighted about is, equipment comes in last night. I know that by Monday or Tuesday, it will have been distributed by the Indian Red Cross to areas across states and territories where it's needed. We've been advised by the government of India to date that some of that Australian medical supplies has made its way to around 19 of India's states and territories, and that's great, because we know it's going where it's needed.
What we're seeing currently, we just saw Rajnath Singh, our defense minister, the latest communication with leaders from both sides, with your defense minister as well. In terms of India and Australia's defense partnership, which is a strong pillar of the strategic partnership that was kicked off when the PMs had their virtual summit last year, how is the defense relationship progressing?
Look, I think the defence relationship's been going extremely well, and of course, at a time of rising tensions in the region, at a time of where territorial claims have been increasing, where cyber attacks have become more frequent, where what we call the liberal rules and norms that usually govern the world are also under assault. It's important. So no secret that a year ago, Prime Ministers Modi and Morrison meeting virtually and elevating our relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership, both committed to an Indo-Pacific region which was free and healthy and prosperous and sovereign because of some of these threats. So the defence relationship is one of the cornerstones of the Australia-India relationship. We saw the return of Australia to exercise Malabar last year, but we continue to see increasing and more complex exchanges and exercises between our military forces. That reflects in part the greater dangers out there in the wide world, but also reflects the degree of trust between our two countries.
The former that you're referring to, the greater dangers out there, when you're talking about the Indo-Pacific and greater aggression, it undoubtedly at this geostrategic moment, if you can call it that, stretching that period, is referring to China. But India, Australia, like you're saying, this complex relationship or web of relationships, it's not just bilateral. You mentioned the Quad. There have been a lot of individually bilateral relationships that, say, Australia or India have, and trilateral relationships, which are extremely important. Say with France, there was a first time meeting there, I think in the UK just last month, and with Japan.
I think this is an example of Indian leadership, Amitabh. When I arrived here in India in February last year, I had no idea what the word plurilateral meant. And then your external affairs minister published his book, The Indian Way, which is a great read and explains very simply for people that perhaps think that these things are incompatible with being members of the United Nations and other groups. The fact is that the argument is that we should cooperate with people who share the same values, who are confronting the same issues, because 2 minds, 3 minds, 4 minds, or 5 minds are better than one. And I think that's one of the great contributions that is now being recognised thanks to the disrupted world over the past 18 months as being an Indian initiative. And the Quad is an important tool. It's an important tool for dialogue, and it's been an important tool for us to respond flexibly and collectively to some of the most pressing challenges facing the region. That Quad summit meeting a month or two ago was historic. It sent a very strong message of the commitment of all 4 countries, to act in support of a region anchored in international law. And of course, it also put in place a number of important measures, including that landmark vaccines partnership, combating climate change, and of course, dealing with critical emerging technologies. So I think the way in which India has seen the world, the way in which India is increasingly engaging with the world, is frankly becoming the norm. And Australia is happy to be a partner with India in these missions. We see India as the natural leader in the region, and we share what Prime Minister Modi a year ago described as a sacred duty to ensure that the Indo-Pacific region remains free, open, and secure.
Free, open, and independent and secure. The Indo-Pacific, all these movements, whether it's in the Quad, whether it's La Perouse, and we saw the exercises with the French and Australian and American navies as well earlier, or bilaterally, or these trilateral engagements are all a gathering momentum, would you say, High Commissioner, because of the way China is behaving across different dimensions?
Well, I can't deny that, Amitabh. It's clear that in recent years, China has been more openly, aggressively challenged, and aggressively challenged established international rules and norms in the way that concerns many countries, including Australia. It concerns me that tensions on the line of actual control escalated beyond the grey zone tactics we've seen before, leading regrettably to conflict and loss of life last year. The reason we have established rules and norms are the same reason we have rules in cricket. We can't permit people to ignore the rules and try and win games in underhand ways. And if they do so, as Australia's cricket team found to its shame a year or two ago, they deserve to be called out. But what they do should not become the norm. And so Australia's relationship, these are established rules and norms that have served the interests of all countries, large and small, for decades. And along with India and other countries in the region, we're all for standing up for them. Australia's relationship with China, our largest trading partner, remains under considerable strain. That's also true. Many of the issues that China raises concerns about in the Australian context relate to important national interest decisions and legislation that Australia has introduced in a country agnostic but context aware way in response to evolving security dynamics and threats. So yes, we have foreign influence legislation. Yes, we have restrictions or assessments to determine who is able to invest and buy land in Australia, but so too do many other countries. And that's about that's about a country's national interest. India has a national interest. We have a national interest, and our plan is always to try and be consistent about applying Australia's national interests in our decision making.
Country agnostic, context specific, you said. I just get to some other decisions that have been taken, say, domestically by Australia. But again, just on the Quad, the trilaterals, different kinds of pressure that is being applied by different groupings and different dimensions. Do you think it's actually working in terms of changing any of China's behavior? Just recently we see what they do with Malaysia. Before that, it was with Philippines in the Whitsun Reef.
Time will only tell, Amitabh, but the fact is that, whether it's when we were in primary school in the schoolyard, you've got to call out bullies. So, if you don't, it's only going to get worse. And I think what we saw when my foreign minister was in Washington a week or two ago was her opposite number, the Secretary of State, make a very clear point about his support for the Quad's vision of the Indo-Pacific, which is about that independence and sovereignty, about freedom and security, and certainly freedom from authoritarianism. And I think that's the point of it, is that, it is a very bad analogy, I should never have started it, but just as in that schoolyard when you're a young child, if you've got someone picking on you and you've got more friends, guess what? They stop.
As you say, time will tell. We saw those interactions between Peter Dutton and Secretary of Defense, US Lloyd Austin. You were talking about Blinken and Payne as well, Quad, Japan, all these countries involved. So it'll be interesting to see what really happens. Use a cricket analogy of underhand tactics or rules. And I'm not sure whether it was one of the Chappell brothers who actually bowled that underhand ball. But anyway, apart from cricket, domestically...
I was more concerned, Amitabh, about sandpaper, but I shouldn't even mention that.
Right. I mean, but on a more serious note, High Commissioner, in terms of lives lost, India has been in the forefront. You mentioned Galwan. It's almost a year since what happened on the border with Tibet, June 15th. Australia has been at the forefront of all other kinds of tactics that have hit you, economic, tariffs, whether it's your wine, barley, iron ore, lots of verbal issues as well. How would you say Australia is standing up to the pressure with, of course, help from others? I hope not just verbal help, because you mentioned Victoria and the deal that was scrapped legislatively in terms of the BRI, and we saw how China responded to that as well. How is Australia handling the pressure, and will it continue on that path?
I think the answer is with resilience and with agility. So for a country that for all of its European existence has been a trading nation, we've seen, even in my lifetime, markets come and go. When we, like your colonial history, our early trade was with Britain, but then they joined the what was called the common market, and we lost that market, so we went looking for more. And so what's good about the past 12 or 18 months is not the the fact that we welcome, the attempted economic coercion by a country, but the fact that we've redoubled our efforts to look for other markets. And the last figures I saw, we'd actually finished the year quite well. So that if the intent was to try and damage the Australian economy short term, there's certainly no sign of that in the most recent national accounts that were published. We have found other markets, but the important thing here is that the Australian community is united on the fact that as a country, regardless of which party is in office, decisions must be made that are in the best interests of Australians today and in the future. And we will never trade a national decision for a trade contract. We would prefer to find another market because once you start trading away your citizens' national interests, not only, in my view, as a Democrat, do you shorten your time in office, but you absolutely damage your country's long-term prospects.
Prospect, you're saying the effort is to build other markets, but some research is showing that 47.5 billion, if I remember that figure correct, is the damage that has been estimated to the Australian economy because of what China is really doing. Is that a mosquito or a fly that you're swatting?
Something just went off loudly, but let's see what happens. Hopefully you can still hear me. The point that I'd make is genuinely is that whilst we heard about barley, beef, wine, tourism, what you didn't hear was that strategically China continued to still buy resources that supported some of its major industries. So coal and iron ore and even liquid natural gas exports increased over the year. So they were pretty strategic about it, even if in a presentational sense they were pretending or aggressively that they were punishing Australia or seeking to punish Australia for goodness knows what. But the fact is that Australian industry has responded. Australian markets are looking elsewhere, and that's why, frankly, one of the reasons that Australia and India are more keenly looking at each other, and this has been happening for a number of years. I think the great unfulfilled potential in the Australia-India relationship is not in defence, where it's very close. It's not in science and research and education, where it's been very close and growing. It's in the economic sphere. And we can benefit each other. India has great aspirations to grow its industry off the lessons of the past 14 or 15 months as a result of COVID, where we understood about what happens when there's a global pandemic and supply chains are interrupted, what happens when manufacturing has left your country, as it has from Australia, to go to other countries. And if India, for instance, wants to be the world's largest manufacturer of electric vehicles, if it wants to have a mission to have a big electric battery storage program, Australia's got the elements in the rare earths and critical minerals that can assist that to become a reality. Otherwise, you have to look elsewhere. And of course, so much of the world currently gets those items from India's northern neighbour. So we have what is called a complementary economy, where we have elements that can assist India grow. India has elements that can assist us grow, and that's most noticeable from the great benefit that whether it's Tata, whether it's Wipro, whether it's Infosys and others bring to Australia. India is our largest source of skilled migrants and skilled workers, and I can only see that increasing into the years ahead.
And has there been any movement, or has the pandemic really hit what you're talking about in terms of business or economic cooperation, of complementarities, whether it's rare earths, it's critical technology, or the skills that we have being, juxtaposed and work together? How far is that moving?
I think it's been helped in two ways. Firstly, the global lockdown at the start of COVID last year reminded business again that you shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket. So there is I think worldwide businesses are seeking to diversify production, diversify sales markets. So I think that's assisting. Secondly, of course, you've seen significant reforms here in India, reforms designed to attract investment, reforms that are seeking to attract foreign direct investment, the introduction of production-linked incentives, the encouragement of companies to relocate their manufacturing base to India. All of those things are positive, and the governments, both state and centre governments of India, deserve to be congratulated for those efforts. You know, as the old saying is, there's always opportunities in crises, and this is potentially one of them. But you know, the downside, of course, is that because borders are closed, because COVID is not yet under control and the world is not yet vaccinated, for some who may not be familiar with India, virtually engaging isn't always enough. If you're going to invest capital in either country,
Sure.
you want to look people in the eye in a room, shake their hand if it's COVID possible these days, and see the market, the products, the environment for yourself. So there's certainly been some investments that have taken place over the past 14 months, but I think some of it has been stymied because people will always want to have a closer relationship. And of course, Australia has restricted access to its borders. That's been one of our strengths in battling COVID. And hopefully, as that starts to unlock next year, we will see we'll overcome that hurdle, and the growth and the economic relationship will continue. A year ago, both Prime Ministers committed to encouraging trade and investment between their countries, but importantly, also committed to re-engaging on the closer economic agreement that would be a great framework for increased trade and productivity between our two countries.
Face-to-face interactions that you were mentioning, not only at the business level, we're expecting the 2+2 whenever that couldn't happen. That was mentioned by Rajnath Singh, our defense minister, when he spoke to your defense minister as well. A recent summit, Australia and New Zealand, and all the reporters' questions were again on whether New Zealand is the weak link in terms of hitting back at Chinese aggression economically. How did that summit go?
Look, it went very well. So New Zealand and Australia have a long history. New Zealand and Australia have a cricket history that you referred to earlier, and occasionally there is the odd disagreement, but that happens with the best of friends and the closest of neighbours, and with your brother and your sister occasionally. But there was no concern there on either side about the view that both countries takes, which is that their decisions will be based on national interest. They believe, both of us believe, in those international rules and norms that assist big countries like India, large continents like Australia, but equally small populations in small countries like New Zealand. And New Zealand, Australia have a very strong commitment to the Pacific. New Zealand, India and Australia have an equal commitment across the Indo-Pacific as well. So, I think the New Zealand government, the Australian government, are on the same page when it comes to the strategic outlook. We may go about it at times differently. We may use different language, but our goals and our principles and our values are exactly the same.
Since you've used New Zealand so many times in an answer to the High Commissioner, I mean, apart from our defense operation, which you said was a cornerstone business, investment, Indian origin people, all the commonalities, assistance that has gone both ways, COVID. I think one other area where Australia will back India to the hilt, and probably so will you, is when the World Test Championship final happens and India take on your neighbours, the Black Caps.
Absolutely, but can I be honest and tell you that I am never unhappy when India beats Australia. It's not that I will ever, openly wish that my country loses, but I know that when India beats Australia, people back here are so delighted that it makes my life easier. I was on a trip to Amritsar, coming in from the airport to the Golden Temple when I was listening to the broadcast, and those final balls were bowled and India won the series. And I have to say that I was delighted, and the people that I met with at the temple that day were incredibly delighted.
a perfect envoy of Australia to India. You support us on the cricket as well. High Commissioner Barry O'Farrell for the World Test Championship final. Of course, may the best team win. But thank you so much for this interaction and more of a chat than an interview there, I can see. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Amitabh.
And just a reminder to our viewers, do click on the bell icon on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to our channel as well. That helps us with the subscription numbers. If you want to support us financially in doing what we do, and every bit counts, you can go onto our website. The link is given in the description of this video. Do also follow our social media handles on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for the latest news and analysis from an Indian perspective. This is The Gist on StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh Revi.